Another day of important breaking news out of the organization of the Montreal Canadiens. This time it's about their management team, Jeff Gorton and Ken Hughes. They'll be sticking around. We'll discuss an extension and a promotion coming up next. So welcome back to another video here at Top Shelf Hockey. As I mentioned, we have some more breaking news out of the Montreal Canadiens organization. Of course, we just had a short time ago the Lane Hudson contract extension. Well, today we have another one, except it's not around a player. It's around their management team, who I think many would agree have done a pretty good job here in their time so far with the organization. Of course, Jeff Gorton's been with the Montreal Canadiens since the fall of 2021. So obviously he's got a full 4 years in now. And then, of course, Ken Hughes was hired as the general manager a few months later. So obviously at this point, I think it's fair to say that most people would agree they've done a good job. The team has, I think you could say they basically rebuilt this team. I mean, it didn't go all the way down to the bare minimum like you've seen some teams do, but it was pretty close. They hung on to a few veterans, and obviously they're back to being more competitive and made the playoffs last year. You know, a little quicker than some of the other teams that we've seen kind of go through that process here in recent years. But we now have news confirmed by the Montreal Canadiens, and not just speculation any longer, that Jeff Gorton and Ken Hughes have agreed to 5-year extensions. Now, of course, Jeff Gorton previously was considered the vice president of hockey operations. Ken Hughes was the general manager. Jeff Gorton now comes along, gets a promotion. He is now basically what he was before for all intents and purposes, but he is now president of hockey operations. Of course, like I said, these guys have made lots of good trades. They've done some good drafting, and this team has become very competitive and relevant again in a I think a fairly short stretch. We've seen some teams go through rebuilds in 7-8 years, be out of the playoffs. In some cases, you've seen other teams going to rebuild over a rebuild, and this team has had a pretty good 3-4 year stretch of changing the players and drafting well and kind of building things back up. I mean, if you look at their trade record, Ken Hughes has done a good job. I mean, this past summer, the trade for Zach Bolduc looks really good. Obviously, we'll see what Logan Mailloux becomes in St. Louis, but that looks like a really good trade for them so far. Of course, they had the Noah Dobson trade as well. That trade, it's very early, but of course, Dobson we know is a good player. And I don't think it was a big overpayment or anything. So, to be honest, what they gave up, I think, was reasonable for a player of his ilk. So, again, some good trades there. Even looking back to like the Sean Monahan trade, I mean, that might not seem like a big deal to some, but I know like the fact that they were basically paid by the Flames to take that contract on, fully let Monahan kind of rehabilitate his career, and then move him for more assets coming back. So they get paid twice for basically taking on a player that, was a lot of people thought might have, ending his career. And instead he had a chance to get healthy and get a new lease on life. And now look, he goes in last offseason, of course, and signed a fairly long-term extension or new contract with the Blue Jackets. So again, not the Monahan trade worked out quite well. Just good asset management. We saw them trade Carey Price this, recently here this offseason. That was more of a cap management trade, but again, getting themselves out of long-term injury reserve. One of the first big moves we saw Hughes swing at was the Kirby Dach trade at the draft, of course. I don't know that's. It's not a bad trade, but we need to see more consistency from Doc to stay healthy and solidify his role before we can say, that it was, a real good deal. But when it happened, a lot of people were excited going, okay, these guys are going to be aggressive. And really, if it wasn't for injuries, I think it would have been a lot better so far. The Patrick Laine trade, that one you could say, okay, Laine needs to give them more at 5-on-5. Laine needs to give more better play away from the puck on, an even strength, that type of stuff. Was real good in the power play last year. I don't know how long Laine sticks around in Montreal, to be honest. I've said this, but you know what? Even if Laine doesn't work out to be a long-term, big-time goal-scoring success in Montreal, they really didn't give up that much in the grand scheme of it, that it's, like the Blue Jackets took a defenseman in Jordan Harris who they decided not to even keep. So like really they took that full cap hit on because they were able to, And, Laine's given them some good goals, but he's also, I think, given a little bit of uncertainty over where he fits and all that. But still, short term, I still like the asset management and the fact that they're willing to take big swings, and really, not all swings are going to lead to a big hit. And some of these, though, you're minimized by what you gave up to take that swing. From a drafting standpoint, looking at the last couple of drafts here, in 24, they got Demidov and Michael Hage. Demidov, obviously, some teams shied away because of the Russian factor. They, I think, shied away from Michkov the year before. And I don't know if I want to say they learned their lesson or what have you, but I think they could have had Michkov and chose not to. So I think they weren't going to let that go with Demidov. The year before, they've got Jacob Fowler, who, right now projecting to be the goalie of the future. Took David Reinbacher high. That pick is still a little bit to be determined here yet. It's early to call Reinbacher a bust or anything. We're not near that stage. I know some fans are very impatient, but it's too early for that. But obviously, you'd like to see him progress more. But again, injuries have played a role. In 22, like I said, that was the first big moves here for Hughes as the GM, drafting Uri Slafkovsky, kind of raised some eyebrows as the first overall pick. And now he's become a member of their core, signed to a long-term deal. A player that I think they still like to see more out of at times, but, they also got Lane Hudson, and then, later in that draft, again, a steal. Owen Beck came in, I think it was the second round, if I believe. So, they've had a pretty good drafting record. They've got good record with their trades, good asset management. They brought in Marty St. Louis as a head coach, with, again, a former player, Hall of Famer, a player and person that a lot of people have nothing but respect for. But also, as much as they like Marty in respect to what he's done in his career, he never really had nowhere near enough relevant experience, in theory, to become a head coach of an NHL team, especially one as like Montreal. But he's doing a good job. Again, they think outside the box. They knew Marty well on a personal level. They had other connections to him, and were confident that he would do the job. So they weren't kind of forcing themselves to kind of, follow a certain process. They're like, okay, we're willing to kind of think outside the box. We're willing to take chances, but they're calculated chances. And they've done a really good job in Montreal. Jeff Gorton and Ken Hughes, they've had multiple requests. The team has, and owner Jeff Molson, for other teams to speak with Jeff Gorton especially. And he's denied it every time. I think there's been 3 occasions that other teams wanted to speak to him about an opportunity to take a promotion and work on their organization, and they were denied. So clearly he's viewed upon by Molson as being a big asset there, and rightfully so. They've done a good job. They got good extensions here. I fully expected that. They're going to have a long run here to see what they can do with this team long before they'll ever consider making changes. So let me know your thoughts on this big news. They've taken care of a lot of the players. Now the management team gets looked after in Montreal. The whole thing working together has done well, and we'll be sticking together for an extended period of time. Let me know your thoughts on the news in the comments. We'll discuss further. If you're new to the channel, make sure you subscribe and stick around. We'll be back a little bit later with the rest of the news and rumors around the entire NHL. Thanks for watching. I'll catch you next time.